Hi, and welcome to another episode. That was supposed to be Danish, by the way, but I couldn't find anywhere that actually said how to pronounce it. So all I had was H-E-J, and that's kind of what I went with there. So anyway, welcome to another episode. We're going to be talking about lore today, lore questions. I actually stupidly picked 2 questions, then opened up another Word document, then picked another 2 questions, and then realised I had 4. So we're going to be risky today. We're going to go for 4 questions. Hopefully I can get them all in. And if any of you have got ideas for what you'd like to see for the next spotlight in the next lore episode, please feel free to leave your comments and other lore questions in the description down below. Today I should probably change who we've had in the background, so we're going to be looking at some stuff from the Dazed Rabbit. Depending on how long the video goes on, I might use 2 of their clips because they're all about 10 minutes long. But in any case, thank you very much to them. And also, I'm going to throw this out there again. The list is, we're not that near the end of the list, but the list is depleting now. So if you've got some footage on your channel that you might like to appear on Guild Wars 2 Daily at some point, please feel free to tell me by way of a personal message on YouTube, on Twitter, or in the comments, anywhere you want. I'll probably be able to find it. So thanks very much for that. Anyway, guys, let's actually get started with the questions. The first one was asked by HF Shipper T, who said, "It would be nice to have some information on the Hylek, but the race I'm most curious about is the Skrit. Where did they come from?" Well, okay, well, you kind of threw it 2 ways there. A lot of people have been asking about the Hylek. I will get to them, but you've said the Skrit here. And I guess that's who I can focus on quite briefly. If you've looked at any of the stuff that was released for Asura Week, I did do some videos on that at some point. They did talk a fair amount about the Skrit, but essentially the Skrit are a race that just seems to be in the game to just annoy you if you're an Asura. And not just the Asura, I suppose, because you can see that whatever race you're playing, the Skrit are about. But these guys are a race that was introduced to fill a gap, I feel like, that was in the lore that was really another race that existed underground. So we heard about the Asura and how they had this advanced civilization and they all lived deep, deep underground in the depths of Tyria. And then Primordus started moving about and they all got shifted to the surface. But we never heard about any other races that did the same thing. And that was kind of interesting. It was like, well, hold on, why didn't anyone else pop up? So with Guild Wars 2, they've introduced this other race here, this new race that we never saw in Guild Wars 1, called the Skrit. And these are essentially, just think of them as the rats in Guild Wars 2. They're essentially the rats that are there in the game. They are a nuisance to the Asura. Individually, they are very stupid, they're very dim-witted, and they're very, very easy to dispatch. They can't think of many things, really. They just run around liking to collect shiny stuff, like magpies, and that's really what would define a single Skrit. But the Skrit have a very unique way of communicating with one another in that they speak very, 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 very fast and in very high pitches as well. And what this enables them to do when they're together is to transfer their ideas to one another pretty much as fast as they can think and to process new ideas as soon as they hear them from other Skrit. And the result is that if you get 2 Skrit next to each other, they talk to each other really, really fast, and in the blink of an eye, they've both assessed the situation and pulled their knowledge together of everything that's going on, and then they've processed all that information, and now, because there's 2 of them and they've discussed this, they're a little bit smarter. And then if you had a 3rd Skrit in, that Skrit can be talking at the same time as those other 2 Skrit. They'll just nat away at each other, and now they essentially have 3 brains combined in one. And if you add them all together, if you have 10 Skrit, all of a sudden they're quite a formidable group. They are pretty dangerous. Now the gameplay doesn't seem to reflect this at all, not even slightly. There might be some events that are more difficult if there's loads of Skrit around or something like that, but really the enemy AI won't improve as more Skrit come around. But this is how they are established in lore. They are a group that they're kind of like the hive mind race of Guild Wars 2. They are a group that gets smarter and smarter and smarter as there are more of them in close proximity. Now there is obviously a distance at which they can't hear each other talking and they become more stupid essentially. So the idea is that the Skrit pull together in these massive cities where they run around just scavenging the stuff, all these shiny things that they care about, and bring them into their big cities. And if you were unfortunate enough to find one of these cities with these hundreds and hundreds of Skrit together, you're pretty much going to die. And the Asura, priding themselves so much on their intelligence, particularly hate the Skrit because they see Skrit as individuals, and an Asura can outclass them immediately. But if a single Asura were to come across a whole colony of Skrit, he's not going to escape. He's going to get completely and utterly mentally dominated, and that is what the Asura, I think, hates so much about the Skrit. And they really are quite a cool nemesis for the Asura. They pestered them since before either of these races came to the surface world after Primordus started moving around, and really the Asura came up there and thought, hey, we got away from the Skrit, but now they've appeared. And they are winding up the other races as well, but they don't get under the skin of other races just as much as they do with the Asura. They're kind of like an annoying race for them. They're a very, very cool race, and I quite like them. And we have heard of a Skrit city, in fact, a dynamic event chain supposedly that's in the game somewhere called Skritsville, and it's going to be this huge chain where you can actually become allied with the Skrit by doing certain stuff for them, and that will actually give you, the players, access to an entire city that's in the game of the Skrit. But if you fail to keep these events going, the Skrit can fall out of favour with you and lock you out and kill you for being in their city and stuff, which is really interesting. One of the more interesting dynamic events we've heard about, and that's the a very basic overview of the Skrit. I think they might even have their own blog post on the ArenaNet blog, in which case if they do, then I would have read that out at some point in the lore blog post series. But yeah, that's the Skrit. Moving on, we do have 4 questions. The next one is by Josh Truff, who said, topic, Lionguard. Where do they come from? Who do they consist of? Do you think you will be able to join them at some point in the campaign? I've noticed all kinds of races, including non-playable ones with the shiny gold armor. Do you think they will have a part to play in the campaign, or will they just be filler NPCs to guard areas? A few questions. First, do I think they'll be filler NPCs? Yes, sadly. I do think they'll be filler NPCs. Do I think we'll be able to join them at some point in the campaign? I think in the sense that we might have a mission or two where we're fighting alongside them, we'll be able to join them, but whether there'll be a specific faction, something along the lines of the Vigil or the Demon Priory, no, I don't think that will happen. They've never said that that would happen, and maybe they missed a trick there. That would have been quite cool, actually, if they had, you know, the Vigil, the Demon Priory, the Order of Whispers, or the Lionguard. I could imagine that. That'd be quite cool. But the thing with the Lionguard is they are very much centric to Lion's Arch. That's what they care about. But the Lionguard come from, they're a very, very old organisation, really. When we first found Kryta in Guild Wars 1, really, there were 3 groups that we became immediately familiar with that were in Kryta. There were the White Mantle, who had stepped up after King Jadon had fled the throne in the wake of the Char attack. There were the White Mantle, this cult of people who had found these new gods for the humans there, the Masat, and the Masat saved the humans from the Char. So when we reached Kryta 2 years after this happened, the White Mantle were kind of the big dogs. They were the people in charge. They were the one organising and running Kryta. And at the time, they didn't appear particularly corrupt, but they were forcing this kind of religion, if you will, of the unseen ones as the gods on the Krytan populace, and some people didn't like that. So you had the White Mantle, right? These were the kind of the big guys in charge. Then we also had the Shining Blade were there, and these were a faction of Krytans who didn't like that the White Mantle were in charge and were rebelling, essentially. They found out that the White Mantle was sacrificing innocent people, which was one of the more questionable things the White Mantle were doing. So the Shining Blade said, no, we've had enough of this, and they started to fight back against the White Mantle. So we heard about this, the White Mantle and the Shining Blade, and that's really what it was. It was these 2 factions against each other. But there was a third faction as well. The capital city of Kryta at the time, Lion's Arch, had its own guards and its own people that essentially functioned separately, completely separately to the White Mantle, and really they were just there to protect Lion's Arch. And mainly that was because the royalty, even though they weren't actually in power in Kryta at the time that we got there, were based there at Lion's Arch, and that was really their primary jurisdiction, to protect the royalty. So we got to Kryta, and there were also the Lion's Guard, and these were like this third faction that didn't really hold particular allegiance to either the White Mantle or the Shining Blade, or they shouldn't have. Eventually they came round and they teamed up with the Shining Blade right near the end of things before we killed all the White Mantle and pushed them out of Kryta for good, pretty much. I mean, they do still exist in Guild Wars 2, of course, in a very small way, but they were removed from power by the combined might of the Shining Blade and the Lionguard, and they formed together this alliance. Then what happened, essentially, was over the 250 years, as you may know, a massive tidal wave hit Lion's Arch and pretty much destroyed Lion's Arch as we knew it in Guild Wars 1. Now you can see it down there at the bottom of the ocean, and a group of pirates basically rebuilt Lion's Arch as a free state, and that's how things went. The Lionguard as a faction then, as soon as Lion's Arch itself became a free state, that kind of separated the Lion's Guard completely from Kryta and this idea of them protecting the royalty. And they also just became like these free organisation of people that were there to protect Lion's Arch. And now you will see them along the roads and stuff, really far away from Lion's Arch as well. This thing they're calling the Lion Road. And this will take you all the way to Lion's Arch. And it seems like that's like spread out all over the place. You can see it in areas of Kessex Hills, and you can see it as far, you know, to the side as near where Meattoberfest was happening in Ascalon, a really, really long way away. So it seems like these guys are just patrolling and helping people to get to and from Lion's Arch and protecting Lion's Arch itself as well. Really, that's the function they play now. And when you ask, do you think that they'll just be generic filler NPCs? I think that's their primary purpose in Guild Wars 2. I do. I don't think the organisation is going to do anything fascinating or interesting out of the ordinary, but they are, you know, even though they are filler NPCs, they do have history, and I think that's quite cool. They did have somewhere that they came from, and their allegiances have slightly changed now, but really that's what they're there for. They're there for Lion's Arch. Right, the next question, I'm determined to get all 4 done, is from Beavertron13, who said, I have a lore question. Do we know who requested that Zane create Rocks, Pox, and Nox? The wiki only say there was an unknown person that tricked him into it. So this is one of the great mysteries that I thought was going to be answered in Guild Wars 1, but doesn't seem like it's going to be anymore since the live team is now no longer working on content expansions for Guild Wars 1. We were introducing Guild Wars Beyond in some of this new content that came out while they were creating Guild Wars 2 to this story of Zinn, who was an Asuran inventor, a Golemancer, one of 3 really important Golemancers essentially, who had been hired basically or been made to create these great golems, but the person who did it tricked Zinn and gave him essentially a faulty power core or a faulty part to his golem, which essentially caused the golems to lose control of him, and they all went out and tried to essentially cause chaos, tried to kill some of the leaders of some of the great areas in Tyria, and it caused a lot of problems. But this unknown person that actually did this and manipulated all of this and caused all of this to happen was never revealed to us, so this is like a mysterious enemy that was operating in some way towards the end of Guild Wars 1's storyline, but is still out there, we've never met, and is just a bit of a mystery. We don't know who requested the Zinn create these things, and when the wiki says it's an unknown person, that's because it's an unknown person. We don't know. How's that going to play into Guild Wars 2? I'm really not sure at the moment, but I'm very curious to see how they do manage to roll it all in, because whoever that person is going to be dead in the next 250 years, right? So it'll be very interesting to see how they actually tie this together. There's a lot of loose threads with Guild Wars 1 Beyond stuff. Someone else asked me a question about Mad King Thorn as well, and that's true as well. That's something else I thought was going to be popping up and answered in Guild Wars 1, but doesn't seem to be now. So we're going to have all that storyline too that's going to have to be resolved in Guild Wars 2, and I'm not sure how they'll do that either. I'll maybe explain Mad King Thorn in a later episode. Anyway, last question is from Second Third First, who said, can you try to find out or give your opinion on why all the races speak one language? There is the Crichton script all over the place, but at the same time humans speak the same language as the Char, the Norn, Silvari, and the Asura. There is a distinction in the Guild Wars universe, and this is as much as I can say, between spoken language and written language. I believe that there is like one lore source somewhere that actually gives a name to the spoken language, and it just calls it Common Tyrian, I believe, something very, very simple like that. And basically, like, everyone's got the common tongue, and they all speak that language. We don't know why they all speak that language, but there have been occasions in Guild Wars 1 where you would find someone that was speaking a completely different language to you. Really, the way ArenaNet have dealt with language, though, and to say, hey, look, different cultures have got different languages, they've done it all with written language. So the Canthons have got a different language to the Tyrians, the people that live up north, Crichtons and Ascalonians. They do have a different language, but it's simply a different written language, and the spoken one is always the same. I think they've just done that to stop things from getting too complicated. I can't blame them for that. I wouldn't like all these horrible bits of lore and complications coming in where we have to have translators and stuff, but I mean, they have added certain things. When they want someone to become particularly alien and seem particularly weird, they have messed around with language and stuff like that, but for the most part, just assume that for whatever reason everyone speaks the same languages. Everyone has the same spoken language. All races have got the capacity to speak in that language, and they only become distinct when it comes to writing things down, and that's as much as I can offer, and I think that I prefer it that they've done it that way as well. I really do. You know, you can have a minor thing in here and there that has a different spoken language, and really that feels that niche in the lore, shall we say, but past that, let's not have it on a global scale, and they haven't ever really explained it, not in lore. I don't really think they have to. But anyway, there you go, guys. That's Guild Wars 2 Daily done for today. Thanks very much for watching. You may have seen Tomb Raider Underworld uploaded earlier, but then I took it down because I had some kind of copyright thing or something on it, which I'm trying to sort out. But in any case, thanks very much for watching, guys. Don't forget, once again, I'll tell you in case you don't watch the mechanics videos, the lore summary is coming at the end of this week, so yay for that. I'll keep you posted in case that does get delayed a tiny bit, but I'm not expecting it to. So yeah, very exciting, and I guess I'll see you tomorrow.